What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. Time to give you a projected record, a very early projected record for the Mississippi State Bulldogs, and preview the 2024 schedule. Before we get to that, let's look back at the schedule from 2023. Here was the schedule from last season for Mississippi State. Remember they beat Arizona in overtime? And that was a big win for them in the non-conference. They also played Southeast Louisiana, Western Michigan, and Southern Miss in the non-conference. You look at the teams they played out of the SEC East. They played South Carolina, and then also played Kentucky. So it was not really that bad of a schedule. So you say 5-7, that wasn't a terrible first year for Zach Arnett. But with this schedule, really, they should have probably gotten to a bowl game last year, and maybe that's why they did ultimately make that coaching change. So we get to this 2024 schedule, and let's break it down. We'll start with the non-conference, Eastern Kentucky, on the road at Arizona State, Toledo, and UMass. So a similar non-conference schedule to what they had last year. Playing Arizona State on the road, that's going to be a really good game. That's going to be one that could probably go either way. Toledo, I haven't really dug into them yet for this year, but the Toledo's usually pretty good out of the MAC, so that might be an upset alert type game. We'll see. You look at their home games, you've got those three non-conference games, and they have Florida, Texas A&M, Arkansas, and Missouri. Arkansas could be a winnable game for them. Could they? Florida could be a winnable game for them. Texas A&M or Missouri, if they pull off an upset in one of those games, watch out. With this home schedule, there's a real chance for Mississippi State, I think, to get to a bowl game this year. You look at the road schedule again. There's Arizona State, and it's brutal in the SEC. Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, and Ole Miss. You're talking about 4 of the top 6 teams probably. That's brutal, but it's good in a way because. Look, Mississippi State's not going to beat Texas, Georgia, Tennessee, or Ole Miss. Maybe Ole Miss because it's the Egg Bowl, but they probably wouldn't beat those teams at home. So it really, you'd like to just go ahead and play those games on the road. If you're not going to be able to win them anyways, make those your road games and get some games that you might can win at home. And because of that, I think this schedule is going to give Mississippi State a better chance to maybe get to a bowl game this year. So let's start with week 1 against Eastern Kentucky on August 31st. They'll play them at home. Then they go on the road to play Arizona State the next week. And then September 14th, they're back home for Toledo. And then Florida on the 21st at home. And then they'll play Texas on the road on the 28th. So, right away, look, Arizona State on the road. Toledo, again, a tricky game. Florida at Texas. And that's just in the first 5 weeks of the season. They get their first bye week after Texas. Imagine having to play Texas and Georgia back-to-back. Arguably the top 2 teams in the conference. Both on the road. They do play them in back-to-back games, but not back-to-back weeks because they get a bye week in between. So that'll make that a little bit easier, but let's be honest here. I don't think anyone sees Mississippi State winning either one of those games. But then you've got Texas A&M on the 19th at home, Arkansas at home on October 26th, and then they'll play UMass at home on November 2nd. After that is a road game at Tennessee on the 9th. Then they get their second bye week. Could they potentially use that to pull off a big upset? Could they maybe knock off Missouri at home on November 23rd? Well, then they got Ole Miss on the road on November 30th, which I'm assuming that game will be on Thanksgiving. But if you look at the schedule right now, it does have it on Saturday. I don't know when they'll shift that. But again, you look at this schedule, the road schedule is brutal. It is absolutely brutal. But some games at home that they can win. I'm not going to say they have no chance in some of these home games. Again, with Florida, maybe even Texas A&M, maybe even Missouri, definitely Arkansas. So they've got a chance in some home games in the SEC. Interesting that they don't play Alabama. Those campuses are pretty close to each other, and they do not play Alabama this year. They don't play Auburn either. It's a new era of SEC football. But you've got the tough back-to-backs there with Texas, Georgia, bye week in between. The stretch, from Georgia to, I guess there aren't any really tough stretches because of where their bye weeks are. I'm kind of looking at the schedule, looking for the toughest stretches on their schedule. And yeah, you've got some tough back-to-backs. You've got Missouri and Ole Miss there at the end. You've got Georgia and Texas A&M. You've got Florida and Texas. So there are definitely some tough back-to-backs, but no 3 or 4 game brutal stretches. So again, I think this schedule gives Mississippi State a chance to have a better year in 2024 and potentially get to a bowl game. Here were some of the projections from last season. You can see, of course, a 5-7 record for Mississippi State. They were projected to go 6-6. I personally predicted them to go 6-6, and Athlon predicted them to go 6-6. So that was really where this team was expected to be. The over/under was at 6.5. That was a pretty easy one to take the under. It was hard to see this team going 7-5. I know they did have some veteran players coming back, but with the schedule and everything, it was tough to see this team going 7-5. Felt like 5-7 was much more likely than 7-5. So definitely you would have probably wanted to take that, or definitely you would have wanted to take the under there at 6.5. And this team going 6, and not even making it 6-6. They finished 5-7. But 6-6 did seem like it was probably the most likely scenario for them. But let's see what this the projection is for 2024. Again, here's the schedule. This is the scale that we use. If it's under 20, over 80, those are games that are pretty much guaranteed wins. 20-29, 71-80, those are games where I think the spread will be double digits. 30-39, 61-70, those are games where I think the spread will be closer to a touchdown. And then your 50-50 games will be in the white. And of course, we do have a tier system that we use. It's not all about the spreads. So let's start with the easy wins. I think you've got a couple of them. You've got Eastern Kentucky and you got UMass. Mississippi State should be able to take care of these games fairly easily. I think they'll be favored by 20 plus points in both games. Now, I'm not putting Toledo here. I'm actually going to put Toledo in the blue. I'll be honest, I haven't done a lot of research looking into Toledo and how good they're going to be next year, but just going by how good they usually are, this is usually one of the better teams in the MAC. And with Mississippi State, the new coaching staff, a lot of roster turnover, I don't expect this team to be great next year. So I think this is one that the spread is probably going to be closer to 14 to 16 points, maybe in that range. I do think Mississippi State should win, and they'll be a clear favorite. But it's one that, you wouldn't be shocked if they lost. And so, yeah, I'm going to put that game in the blue. And I can go ahead and tell you, if I put that in the green, it would not change the projection. So if you want to put it in the green, that's fine. Again, it's going to be the same projection as far as the overall record goes. So now let's go to the games where I think they're going to be a slight underdog or about a touchdown underdog. That's Missouri. I may be being a little bit generous here to Mississippi State, but it is at home. And again, with the tier system that we use, the thing with Missouri, I've got them as a tier 2 team, but they're really close to being a tier 1 team. And so, that one's kind of tough. But yeah, playing at home, I think, gives Mississippi State a chance to pull off a big upset. If they're going to pull off a big upset, that's the game right there. I think that's probably it against Missouri late in the season. Maybe if Missouri's having a really good year, they're in the playoff conversation, perhaps the pressure builds, they slip up, the cowbells get to them, and they lose that game. But again, they should be favored, I think, by probably 8 or 9 points. So let's go now to games where I think they'll be double-digit underdogs. Tennessee and Ole Miss, both of these games on the road. Ole Miss would actually be in the red if it wasn't a rivalry game. I do take that into account. It is the Egg Bowl. Crazy things happen. But Ole Miss should be much, much better than Mississippi State. Plus, they're playing at home. And same thing for Tennessee. Tennessee should be much better, plus home field advantage. And so I think Mississippi State's probably going to be about a 14 to 16 point underdog in both of those games as well. Talk about games in the red. They do have a couple of them, Texas and Georgia. And how about the fact that they're not back-to-back weeks, but they are back-to-back games. They do get a bye week in between these two. But, boy, those are going to be tough. I don't see Mississippi State having any chance to win either one of those games. They should be 20-plus point underdogs, I think, in both of them. Again, you're talking about two of the best teams in the country, plus having to play them on the road. Now, if these games were at home, you maybe could put them in the orange, but playing on the road, I'm just going to say no chance for Mississippi State against Texas or against Georgia. So that leaves us with Arizona State, Florida, Texas A&M, and Arkansas. I've got these all as 50-50 games. Arizona State is interesting. It's on the road. I think Mississippi State probably going to be favored by about a field goal in that one. But again, playing on the road, that'll be tough. Florida, that could be a true 50-50 game. I actually think Florida's going to be a little bit better than Mississippi State, but it's at home for Mississippi State, so that's a pick 'em. Texas A&M, I think, is probably going to be better than Mississippi State, maybe significantly better. But again, where they finished last year and everything, there's not a huge separation. I do have them in a tier above Mississippi State, but home field advantage for Mississippi State makes this a 50-50 game. And then Arkansas, I think Mississippi State's probably going to be favored in that game as well. Good news is if you win your 3 games, Eastern Kentucky, Toledo, UMass, if you win those 3 games, and then you look at your 50-50 games, you get 3 of those 4 games at home. So that is really, really good news, is if you can win those 3 home games or just win 3 of these 4 games, they're going to get to a bowl game, and they won't have to pull off a big upset. Although, again, like Texas A&M, that it's probably going to be an upset, but not a huge upset. And so you look at their path to get to a bowl game. It's going to be tough, but it's doable if they can win 3 of those 4 games, or split those 4 games and pull off a big upset against a team like Missouri. Again, that could be an upset alert type game right there. So what's the projection? Well, it does come out to 6-6, so it does have them making it to a bowl game. The exact number of wins was 5.6 though, so they were very close to being projected at 5-7. And if you just maybe change one of these games, maybe put Texas A&M in the orange here, maybe that would be enough to bump them down to 5-7. But again, you could also possibly bump Toledo up to the green, so it kind of averages it out at the end of the day to 6-6. I think that's going to be tough. I think it's possible they can get there, but I think it's going to be tough for them just with this schedule. But again, that is the projection for the Bulldogs, 6-6. Do you guys agree? Do you disagree? How would you project the record for this team right now? Let me know your thoughts on Mississippi State down in the comments below.